Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our Thursday book launch. I'm Malika Albrecht. You will not see me in video form because I have really low bandwidth today. But nonetheless, I am here, and you've got a shot of my favorite heart horse, Ellie, there, who has since passed, but got me back into riding. I'm super excited about tonight. We've got a lovely group, and I want to remind everybody, if you would like to read for open mic, just send me a message and I will put you down for reading. I am here to introduce Ruth Bardon, and we are going to be celebrating her most recent book. I will put the link to Finishing Line Press there, and I'm going to read a brief bio before I turn it right over to Ruth. Ruth Bardon grew up in Highland Park, New Jersey, and lived in a number of Midwestern cities before firmly, and boy, are we grateful for that, settling in Durham, North Carolina. She received her MFA degree from Iowa Writers Workshop in 1982 and a PhD in English from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 1995. Her poems have appeared in many journals, which includes Boulevard, Cincinnati Review, New Ohio Review, Moon City Review, and her first chapbook, Demon Barber, was published by Main Street Rag in 2020. Ruth was one of my first people that I think we celebrated on a Thursday. And I'm really happy that she's back here to celebrate once again. I'm going to turn it over to you, Ruth. And I do want to let everybody know, if you want a signed copy, Ruth, is there a way to get a hold of one of those?
You clearly have not seen my handwriting. I guess so. You could ask me and I could mail you one. I guess I haven't really done that, but I'm willing to.
Awesome, because I know a lot of us really do like that. I will put the link directly to the book in the chat section. And Ruth, I am spotlighting you. Welcome. I'm so glad you've come back to celebrate, and congratulations on yet another book.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know why I'm nervous, but I'm very nervous, but I will. Okay. So first of all, Malika, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very, very grateful. The last time I remember being really nervous, but I had a really good time and I was so glad I did it. So I'm really glad I'm doing this again. And I'm just so grateful that you do this and do it so well. I mean, I've sat in on some of your other ones, and you are a consummate professional at doing this. And I also want to thank everyone for coming. I'm seeing, or before they went away on the screen, I saw a lot of faces of people I love very much, and you know who you are. So thank you so much for coming. I really do appreciate it. So for those of you who don't know anything about this book, this is a book of fairy tale poems, more or less. And I wanted to start out by talking about how this came to be, because I'm certainly not a fairy tale expert or a fairy tale person, if there is such a thing. So there was a period of around 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer, starting in around 2005, when my children, who both sing, were in something like 7 or 8 productions or parts of productions or scenes from productions of musicals about fairy tales, including lots and lots of Into the Woods by Sondheim. And of course, I went to all of their shows. So if they were in a high school show that had 6 performances, I went to all 6 of those performances. So I ended up thinking a lot about fairy tales. And so I wrote a poem about Snow White, from Snow White's perspective. And then I wrote a poem about Rapunzel, and then I wrote a poem about Cinderella. And then I thought, this is interesting. So I started sending out, 3 poems about 3 princesses, and like complete rejection everywhere. No interest at all. But I was still kind of intrigued by this idea. So I kept on thinking about princesses, and my 2 friends who I send poems to, my writing friend Kelly and my friend Christine, were both here. They'll know I kept talking with those damn princess poems, So those damn princess poems started to evolve, and I ended up with this book. So I picked 7 poems from this book to read that kind of show the evolution of my thinking. And then I'm planning to read 7 new non-fairy tale poems, which I think of as my regular poems. like I timed it and it's 20 minutes, almost to the dot. So hopefully I'll come in on time. So I guess I'll start. I thought it would make sense to start with that first poem about Snow White. And it's been revised considerably since I started, but this is it. This is so it's called Snow White in the Spring. And it's supposed to be in Snow White's voice, obviously. As far as I know, there are 5 stages. Childhood, which I don't remember. Then cleaning for the men. Next, sleeping, very nice. Now this shattering, and I don't know what's next. The sleep was best, without doubt. I liked the wreaths of roses, and I could catch the sound, if not the sense, of what was said. Rainy days, sunny days, animals or not, my head is a good place to be. And always there was that feeling of being loved and cherished as the men stood watch around me. Now this, which is something new. The glass rings with each blow and breaks into spiny feathers that tickle their way towards me. The velvet cushion sparkles like a field of snow in the sun. This beer wasn't meant to be broken. The animals creep away. The men look at their feet. Who is this stranger with an axe? What does he want of me? Something that starts with a blade, even if it's followed by a kiss, can't ever be happy after. And then, thank you. And then after, I wrote a lot of specific fairy tale poems, this princess and that princess. But then I wrote a poem about a kind of a generic princess who didn't have a story. So this is called If I'd Known. I'm the one without a story. I'm the one who just did her duty, putting on the clothes, standing at the balcony, standing eventually at the altar. I lay down that night in the high bed and felt the chill of the room, watched the dust motes drift from curtain to heavy curtain, heard the trumpets fade as the trumpeters retreated. The gifts I received were not transformative. A princess with a silver bowl is the same princess, not something unforeseen and wonderful in her strangeness. The apples were merely apples, the frogs, frogs. If I'd known, I might have run. I might have seen in the mirror the dark hills over my shoulder, like the murky background of a portrait. I might have made a nest far off in the woods, with a window for squirrels and birds and deer to gather and greet me. Instead, I stayed and had my likeness painted and painted again, and stamped on coins that still exist, resting on the velvet bottom of a glass case. So then I started thinking about writing about other characters in these stories, minor characters and villains. So this is another Snow White poem, but it's from the point of view of the evil queen, the witch. And I was imagining her looking at her magic mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all. So this is called Wanting What's Fair. I keep the mirror in the hallway as if it's nothing special. But late at night, when the servants are sleeping, it pulls me close. I stand before its serpents and swirls, my beauty melts and the mirror speaks. It's a fluttering curtain, an open window, brushed by a tree branch. There's a part of me that wants that branch to break under my weight. The ground would rush up in a flurry of leaves as I fly towards it. There might be apples like hard red fists, or the branch might hold steady and let me climb out, leaving my robe and my crown behind. Before long, I'd be someone else. The fruit would be buried in a blanket of snow, and the girl would find the robe and crown. She'd put them away, or she might put them on, and then the mirror would speak to her. And the next one is from the point of view of the Frog Prince's mother. And I don't really even know the story of the Frog Prince that well, but he's kissed by he's turned into a frog for years and years and years. And then the princess kissed him, and then it's a happy ending. So this is called His Mother Afterwards. When the princess kissed him, he came back, but the years were not restored. He never journeyed to other kingdoms, hearing strange words and nodding grandly as his horse trotted past the cheering crowds. He never stole out of the castle at night, dressed like a commoner, to walk the dirt lanes and talk with his subjects. He never learned to hunt, to fight, to rule, to be skilled in any way, to move beyond first lessons. He sat there croaking and catching flies year after year while we all got older. Each day sank in the water like a raindrop, blending and making no difference to the pond or the fish while we thirsted. As bad as it was, we were better off then, going down to the river, where we'd curse at witches and wait together for the magic we believed in. And then I started thinking about other sorts of folk tales and nursery rhymes and fantasy stories. And I found that other poems I'd written kind of fit into this general category. So this is a poem that didn't start out being about Alice in Wonderland. It started out about imagining being in a different body, but it fit in with Alice's transformations and being big and small. So I kind of renamed this poem Wonderland. If you were very small, you could escape. You could crawl under the quarter round, hide in electrical outlets. Outside, there were broken nuts and the holes left by high heels. If you were very large, you could spread to a thinness unimagined and float above, hidden in plain sight. You could grow terrible and swallow your enemies, licking your lips, an ocean licking the shoreline. If you were in between, neither small nor large, you hide by thinking hard and blending in. You can't outrun or fly. You can close your eyes. You can be a block of wood. Your fingers are twisted twigs. Your toes are roots eruptions. You hope to be scenery, the rustle of leaves and the light flickering through them. And then I started thinking about modern equivalents to these characters. So here's one about a kind of modern princess, and it's called Cheerleader. What no one ever understands is that we're working for them, not for ourselves. It's always someone else's victory. Put yourself in my shoes, day after day, praying for success that's not your own. Being a particle in a wave of noise or a flash of color, a pinprick, a dot, and dreaming night after night of that moment in the locker room when you look up from the sink and the person facing you with the hairspray in her hand is a big, hairy man. Not quite sure where that came from, but and then the last one I'm going to read is about a modern witch. And it's called Witch. Daddy was a big help with my essay and recommendations, so no surprise that I landed at my first choice with an invitation to the dean's dinner. Coming back to the dorm, I was dressed in heels and all the others straggling out in sweaty clothes and lugging trunks up the stairway, including some scrumptious boys. Helpful that it's easy to ask for help. Helpful that I have a fridge with cold beer and pre-mixed margaritas. Helpful that we're all strangers. Helpful that I'm prettier than the other girls. But then again, they're not as hungry as I am and not nearly as hard to feed. So that's the end of the fairy tale poems for today. I'm seeing clapping and that just makes me feel so good. So thank you. Now I'd like to read some newer poems that have nothing to do with fairy tales. And I have 6 very short poems to read, and then one slightly longer one. I don't usually write longer poems, so it's not super long, but it's more than a page. So I'd like to start with one that was inspired with something my mother-in-law said. And this poem is called Jigsaw. Your mother tells me how her own mother always talked when she did jigsaw puzzles, pushing the pieces in and muttering, "I'll make you fit," under her breath. I never met her, but she feels like a friend. I get just as mad when things don't work. It makes me smile to think of her jabbing stubbornly at the cardboard, willing the knobs to be smaller or different, thinking that if the color's right, the shape can't be wrong. But even if she made it work, she'd be left with a picture full of ridges and rips, an oar in the sky, a seagull's wing stabbing its way into the sand. And now I'm going to read a group of 4 poems about childhood. I'm not quite sure why I've been writing about childhood so much lately, but I have. So the first comes from a summer that my family spent in a garden apartment built around a swimming pool. And I'm really glad my sister's here because I know she remembers that. So this pool had colored lights in the sides of the walls. And I thought that was just the greatest thing ever. So this is a poem called Swimming Pool. Underwater, in the sky blue room of its walls, the chalk white of its floors, we couldn't stop swimming through the beams of light, pink, tangerine, yellow, streaming like sunshine from smooth glass spheres, believing we could feel the difference in the colors, believing they'd become a part of us. We'd carry that miracle after we emerged, an amulet of ice staying hard in the sun. When I see the shadow of glass, of steam, where the sun shines off the red vase in the window, I remember how strong I was, slicing through a world where I couldn't even breathe and claiming it as mine. And the next poem, strangely enough, is about memories of waiting in the lobby of our neighborhood post office and looking at the FBI wanted posters. So this poem is called Wanted. So, I'm sorry, I'm hearing laughter from someone and it's making me laugh. Okay, Wanted. So much appealed in the pictures that hung in the post office lobby. The grid of it, black and white rectangles perfectly stacked, up and down, side to side, each bearing a name, the strange abbreviations, the bold-faced letters, the lattice between them like an antique window, the names of cities, the names of crimes, the incomprehensible vocabulary, but best of all, the faces that sliced through the world that I knew, an opening, like the bathroom window my neighbor had climbed through when we'd locked ourselves out, her cheerleader legs scissoring and waving. I hadn't known I could enter that way, hadn't known all the ways I could leave. And the next poem is about some objects that I was fascinated with when I was growing up, and I actually still have 2 of them. And again, if my sister's listening, I'm wondering if she remembers them too. So this poem is called Snakeskin. I loved all 3 of the keepsakes my father brought home from the war, where he built a supply route in Burma. The sword in its leather sheath, the goblets that sat on a tray, and most of all, the snakeskin that flaked and crumbled and shed. And I loved the disjointed stories that shifted and changed each time. A field turning into a mountain, a hospital turning to ash, stories to hold with caution, like the goblets that sat on a tray and that might turn water to poison, and the sword always stifled with leather. But the skin, a crumbling relic of something that threatened and bit, sat quiet in a cardboard box, in our basement in small town New Jersey. A dried seed husk, a shell, with only a shredded story of what it once had been, something my father kept quiet about, no matter how much we asked. And the last in this group is a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I wanted it to be from the point of view of the naive young girl I was. I think a lot of people have that first experience of being moved by art, and that's what this poem is about. And it's called, again, kind of tongue-in-cheek, it's called The Birth of the Artist. So, The Birth of the Artist. Oh, and I should say, some of the things in this poem are absolutely accurate and true, and some I completely made up. So for those of you, there's a few of you here who might have been part of this experience, and I apologize because I know I'm lying, but I like these things in the poem. So, okay. The Birth of the Artist. The thick smoke on the battlefield made it hard to see exactly what was happening on stage. The director's idea, planned and carried out by 3 of the AP chemistry students. Bemused by the chance to be part of a play, they'd thrown themselves into this business with gusto. Offstage, I was in love with the acrid smell of gunpowder, with Appalachian spring trickling out of the speakers, with knowing the tableau the 2 actors formed under the spotlight was called pietà, something vaguely Italian that made the audience quiet. The senior girl closing her eyes as she lowered her head and stayed still, the freshman boy letting her hold him as the notes rose together alone and then joined at the top, almost crying. Then the strobe light that made me shiver and the wonderful swirl of the smoke. Oh, beauty, oh, art, science and death, music and light, while I clutched my props, waiting in the wings, eager to drop them into anybody's outstretched hands. And now I'd like to read a kind of a dark poem, although come to think of it, a lot of them are kind of dark, but so this poem is called Chicken. I didn't see how a truck of stacked crates could carry such a wallop of a smell until I saw the feathers floating in front of my car. City girl that I was, I hoped there was a structure in the middle, but then I thought about it, seeing that it was chicken tall, chicken wide, and chicken deep, a honeycomb of birds, the ones in the very middle, facing bird upon bird. I rolled behind it down the highway. We were one row of marbles shooting down a narrow lane, and I wondered if they felt any panic as the cages shook around them, the rhythm steady or sometimes jerky. Then as it happened, we both pulled to the right, the distance between us getting very small, the feathers getting thicker and the smell increasing as we slowed down and headed toward the same exit. And I want to finish with a slightly longer poem about remembering and not remembering, about memory. And this poem is about eclipse. Sorry, it's about an eclipse, and it's called Eclipse. Right after the eclipse, we all were crazy to see another one, planning Boston in 7 years, Iceland in 9, hanging on to that moment when the sun had disappeared, leaving us stranded in the universe with no control over our bodies, which were pulled by the sight like puppets, made to yell and point and cry. But then we forgot it, went ahead in our small, predictable circles. Though for years I had remembered an opioid no longer in use that I tasted for 10 minutes when my first child was born, had craved it and felt disappointed when my second came too fast for any drug at all, had remembered that dreamy joy after I'd erased everything else about how labor felt, how I thought, oh yes, this, as it started up again, and how it disappeared, eclipsed by the baby himself. So little remains in my memory of all those sleepless nights, the heavy days that followed, just pale scraps and slivers. And when I sometimes try to hear again the voices of the people that I've lost. The longer that they're gone, the more I fail, hearing instead their words in my own voice, although I still retain the way I felt hearing their voices then, like a vibration continuing after the bell is stifled. The obscure mathematics of adding and subtracting pain and pleasure leave me wondering what I'll recall from any time of grief or time of joy. Looking now at the pictures we all took of shimmering crescents underneath the trees, the leaves transformed into a row of pinholes that threw the alien sun down at our feet, the most unearthly thing we'd ever seen until we raised our faces to the sky. And that's what I have.
Thank you so much, Ruth. People, if y'all want to go ahead and unmute, that was amazing. I loved that you brought and shared some of newer work as well.
My goodness. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. That was amazing.
Amazing.
Thank
I
you.
love
When is the
listening to
next
it.
book coming out? When's the next one due to be published?
As soon as a publisher will accept it. I'll keep sending them out and sending them out. from your mouth.
Awesome. It was wonderful to see the once again the synchronicities of lines that stuck with us all. Does anybody have any specific questions to Ruth about our process or about the book that is at Finishing Line Press now, or the one that she's hoping to get published soon?
I don't have
Okay.
hi. I don't have anything about the book per se, but Ruth is my cousin, and she was just as creative and as amazing as she is now when I remember her at 2 years old and 3 years old.
That's a very cool thing to say. So, you're saying that you're not at all surprised this is what, she was interested in or found. That's really cool to hear. And Ruth, you had a question about your sister with the snakeskin poem.
Oh, just if
Did
she
you want to ask?
Well, I think she is muting herself and hiding. Just if she remembered those objects, that we can talk about that on our own.
Yeah,
I don't
that
want
was
to
just a
make
cool,
her
and
come
I
out and
like
hiding.
how the objects themselves had so much energy, and it really did resonate with remembering, some items that we found as children in the attic. So I wondered if other people had had that same experience of, thinking about the things that you found that your parents kept, and that line where he wouldn't talk about it even if we kept asking. And very lovely, very powerful.
Yeah.
Ruth, I'm Ellie. I grew up in Highland Park also. I've known Ruth for what seems like forever. I'm blessed by that. I felt like when you were reading, and I've read the book already, more than once, but I felt like there's this world that you can just kind of sink into as you read each poem. And it's just so fabulous. And one little thing, it's so funny. I was just telling a friend the other day about those FBI pictures in the
That's
post
so
office.
funny.
I am not kidding.
American Avenue, the post office.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway, so it's just absolutely wonderful.
I should say
Thank
that
you. And
three of my best childhood friends are in this Zoom, so that's nice.
so, and Dan verified, yes, loved it, does remember. It's in the chat.
Thank you. I haven't figured out how to do that, but that's okay. I'll look at it later.
I'll send it to you, so don't worry. Yeah, I was going to say I'll send it to you. Mike, you had a question? Oh, might have missed some. Did somebody have a question? I thought I saw somebody's hand raised.
Saw mine.
Okay.
Our
Oh,
mothers.
good. Julio, yes.
Thank you. Our mothers bless us with their stories. I can only imagine, Ruth, how you blessed your children with yours. Just by hearing some of the poems that you detailed in the first section, and not only that, the second. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm Karen. I'm
Julia.
Ruth's sister-in-law. And I just want to say, oh my God, I read the book too. And I was never like somebody who was into poetry or literature and stuff, but just hearing you read it, I just could just feel you. It was so beautiful. And now I'm going to make you read it to me when I see you. Like, are you reading a poem? I just feel like it's so different when you're reading it. It was just really beautiful. I'm so glad that, yeah, to be a part of. That's
Thank
it.
Love that insight, Karen, because, poetry is, an oral art. And a lot of us know somebody who is fond of saying the page is a cold bed for the poem. It's meant to live in the air. So I love that you understood that element, that magic that happens when a poem is spoken. It's beautiful. Well, I love, and you kind of did tell us the backstory, and I was fortunate enough to get to blurb the book, so I already knew we were in for a treat, but I didn't know about the new poems. But I did want to say the backstory of how you got started, and that there was this level of resistance with the damn princesses. I'm really glad you stuck with it, and I like the angles that you took, and it's kind of like watching something that's multifaceted get turned slightly different, and how that brings out another element. And that's one of the joys, I think, of getting to meet so many different poets and seeing so many different minds that shift and bring new insights into what we're reading. Yeah. Oh, okay. No worries, Jan. And Jan also wrote, Ruth, that loves the new poems.
Oh.
And great to see Anne. So.
Oh, right. We've got a little family reunion here. Highland Park reunion,
Yeah,
family
right.
reunion.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. If nobody has any other comments or questions, we will head towards open mic. I do want to read the list out so I know that I got everybody. Regina, Christy, Julio, Karen, Kelly, Elisa. Did I miss anybody?
Oh, I can't hear you all. Did you?
Let me turn off my video if it's slowing down. I was saying that I wanted to make sure I got everybody that wanted to read for open mic. I have Regina, Christy, Julio, Karen, Kelly, and Elisa. Did I miss anybody? Oh, no.
I think I'll read too. I'm
Oh,
Ellie.
good. I was hoping.
Perfect, Ellie. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you again, Ruth. It was amazing. It was great to hear them read out loud, and what a great crew of company to have with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will head towards Regina first, and I will spotlight you. If anybody needs me to pause while you're reading for whatever reasons, the video, I'll be glad to do so. Hi, Regina.
Hello. Hi, everyone. This poem that I'm going to read this evening was actually kind of born this morning. If you've ever heard me talk about my process, things happen in the morning. And so I just happened to, as I was waking up, I sleep with my phone beside me. That's terrible, but I do. And there was a quote. Someone had put up a quote from one of my favorite poets, Warsan Shire. She's a British Somalian. She was a refugee from Somalia, and she's an outstanding poet. And this is from her poem, Backwards. She said, I'll rewrite this whole life, and this time, there'll be so much love, you won't be able to see beyond it. And a lot of her poetry chronicles her experiences as a refugee. So it made me start thinking. And so this poem was born. It is entitled, Be Like. What will this world be like when we can no longer hear the song of the refugee? When all the doors are shut and babies with razored teeth stand beside the decaying bodies, alone and remembering, hungry and ever shifting thought about the goodness of man, the purpose of piety, the futility of dreams. And what will this world be like when skin and tissue and bone become properties owned by fear and flesh who fight with fake affront, commandeering pulp, sanctioning love, enslaving rhymes? And what will this world be like when the sun affixes itself low and brooding and scorches the evil and those less so, and those who silently watched, melting without a word, emotion dried beyond tears? And what will this world be like if the buildings and altars collapse and crumble and the gods move on?
Holy smoke. That is powerful. And I just love that last line in particular. I am so amazed that that's a new poem because it is, my first drafts are such ugly babies that only a mom should see them. Yeah. And the gods move on. Karen just wrote, holy cow. Thank you, Regina. Christy, I'm coming to you.
Okay. Regina, you make it hard to follow you. So what I'll say about this poem is that it accompanies a painting that I did for the Meadows of Dan Folk Art Festival this weekend. And what you need to know about the title is the I in the title is not the I that you see with, but I apostrophe S. And it also follows that in the poem. So here we go. This is titled, She is More Than the Eyes Can See. A face in the mountain, here before time, born of infinite yet finite sand. Now her cleaved pleas are spit out through mechanized teeth, overlooked by half-lidded eyes who believe the winds of change never hold space for remembrance. Thank you.
I was just talking and I'm muted still. I was saying, Christy, do you have a picture of the painting? You're muted too.
I do, but not on my computer. It's on my phone. If I could send it to Karen and borrow her tech skills, she might be able to post it.
Yeah, maybe we can put it in the chat section, or I can share with you something like that. We can try to find a way. I'm just curious now because that was a powerful poem and I really wanted to see the art that went with it. Yeah, her cleaved pleas are spit out.
It's for the mountain exhibit that details the destruction of part of Lover's Leap in Virginia.
That's awesome. I'm glad you participated and it brought a poem and art. Julio, I'm coming to you, and Karen, when you get that, just let me know and I'll pause. Hey, Julio.
Thank you, Malika. As I grow older, I keep Citizen Kane in mind. So I wrote this recent one. I call it Rosebud, Becoming Mumbles. You mature and become an adult. Others look at you and laugh. Make a proper living, despise yourself. Try to be a respectable person. You do not deserve what you have. And Rosebud continues to bloom. Nono says many deny it. Humiliate Rosebud, saying it has no value. He says they are wrong. It is precious and the key that unlocks splendor in every human action. He declares Rosebud will be there after you are searched and stripped, washed and sprayed, put away from the rest of the world. It will be there when they tell you murder and destroy, lie and cheat, transgress and steal. Some smell Rosebud and become disturbed. They disapprove and look away, declare Rosebud is unpleasant, and Nono whispers of our faces. There are others who imagine they experience Rosebud when they give 10% and obey suspicious laws, wander in churches and synagogues, subjugated by water smoke and wafer, praying and chanting, "Oh Lord, where is Rosebud?" Others search for Rosebud, thinking they can find it, and it is not Rosebud, but an illusion. They believe it, they live it, and it is sad. Nono says Rosebud waits for us after our midday betrayals, and through his continuing smiles, below a battered gray fedora, advises we won't reminisce about Rosebud with old friends and little children. Nono softly expresses others would not understand and will be mystified with that old man's mumbling. And the triumph of Rosebud sinks to traces and ashes, uncaptured and futile, brushed away by the wind, decaying as a name on an old sled with every lost memory.
Thank you, Julio.
You're
Every
welcome.
lost memory. Holy smokes. Yeah, we always get to say we have the best open mics because we do. Karen, I'm coming to you.
Okay, I cannot get Christie's, oops. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear
Yeah.
you
Okay.
now.
I can't get Christie's photo of her painting to show up in my email, but maybe, oh, you can't see it. I'll keep
Is
fiddling
it
with,
on Facebook, Kirsty?
I can, no, it's not. It's on my phone, but I don't have a smartphone. So I can't transfer it.
oh,
I was
I
gonna say,
could
if we can
share
get
it
it to
on
Facebook,
Facebook.
yeah, I can then do a share that way, just because we can.
Okay, I'll keep fiddling with it.
All right,
Meanwhile, I'll read a poem.
awesome.
So this is a poem. I know we were talking earlier about thinking that you can't write poems and how in the world do you do that? But a lot of times I read a lot of poems and I'll just read one and sit with it for a minute and then write in response to it. Generally, what I write has absolutely nothing to do with the poem, but it's just like a spark. So this is one of those about bloomings. After reading from the bench I like to call my bench, on page 12 of Frank's Sonnets by Diane Seuss. The lasting isn't the thing. It's the absurd sudden smolder of regret for the fading that's the thing. This is not just about flowers or vegetables, but it can be. This is always about feeling. The fading swells in your throat. It's the way that the sunny side cheek of the beef stick tomato still on the vine bait switches your eye from the seamliness there, which is always somewhere there, where the overripe meat of the thing will erupt from a ragged tear in its flesh on the underneath of it all, every time, given enough time. Everything is perishable. This is not about things. I don't know. Weirdo poem.
I love your poems that have that that thought, like the Karen's mind working. I enjoy it always, Karen. Thank you. Kelly, I am coming to you. Give me a moment just to find you. There we go. I see you now. I'm gonna make you the spotlight.
Oh boy. Thank you, Malika. This has really been a delightful reading. Ruth asked me to read a poem, and she asked me to read the specific poem I will. And it's kind of at the other end of the spectrum from Regina's poem because it's a really old poem. I wrote it for my father, who grew up in Appalachia, and as a young man worked in a small coal mine. And there is some coal mining imagery that I might explain just because it makes it a little easier to understand the poem. at the end of the day, when workers were done picking out a section of the mine, they would lay a line of dynamite. And then when they left the mine, they would light a fuse and blast out the section that they would pick out the next day. This is for my father. It's called Legacy. If you were the house, I was a room, the scratch on the wainscot, the torn screen of the cellar door. If you were the room, I was the view of the apple house, the shed, the tall grass where the snake was killed. If you were the view, I was the black sky bitten by light, a sieve, a simple drink after the day's work. If you were the mule, I was the coal car, wheels on the bent track. If you were the shovel, I was the leaning into day, the first breath stepping out of the mine at dusk. Father, you labor, I bloom. You lay the line, the dynamite, the black powder. And if you are the vein of coal in the low wall, then I am the explosion at the end of day. I am the joyful noise. Thank you.
Oh, that is gorgeous.
Love that.
There are a lot of comments, Kelly. So if you can get to the chat section and see which ones were resonating, but boy, that poem just builds upon itself. You've had that published somewhere?
I'm sorry.
That was
Have
published.
you
Yeah.
had that published? Yeah.
Yes, that was actually in my first chapbook, Flying South on the Back of a Dove. So, yeah.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
was-
Yeah. I felt like I was like, there's no way somebody couldn't have picked that up. And I was going to give you suggestions if you hadn't done it.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's awesome.
Isn't that also the dedication in your second chapbook?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did use that because my second chapbook, Childbed Fever, was about my father and his life after my grandmother died in childbirth. And so it's also the very first poem in that chapbook. So yeah, well, thank you. I'm glad you all liked it. Thanks, Ruth, for pressing me to read.
That's what good friends are for.
Pleasure.
Ellie, I'm coming to you. There we go.
Okay. So this poem is about my uncle who passed away this past December. He was an artist, a musician. Earlier in his life, he was a hairdresser. He fought wildfires. He was a clothing designer. He was deeply honest, irreverent, funny. Obviously, you can tell I was crazy about him. He was just flavored with personality. And it's called Going to Town. And it was written about his last days in the hospital. And I had spent a lot of time there. Going to town. The truth is, my skin stopped in his tube-filled nostrils, his moon-colored chest near his shoulder tattoo, dark red, dark green, his nasal-tuned voice. Lemon rinds were for flavor, birds of paradise, fate. I swim in his near suffocation, in this ocean filled with krill. A volunteer comes with boxed flameless tea lights, a Shabbat mini challah. There is no manual. This room could be more open, the feeling of being cooped up. I trace comfort in his palm, chastely sweet moves for a life stunning as pepper. Anticipation's the hardest, he says. His footsteps whittled, flesh nesting like an old bird with lost feathers. I feel a dance down from the moon, some sort of open-armed womb. Hear his little rapids of breath humming John Prine. Yeah, I'm gonna smoke a cigarette that's 9 miles long. I'm gonna kiss that pretty girl on the tilt-a-whirl. Yeah, this old man is going to town. And those last three lines were from a song by John Prine, who was Mitch's favorite, one of his favorite singers. It's called When I Get to Heaven. Thanks.
Was gorgeous. And his name was Mitch. I was going to ask you. Yeah, I traced comfort in his palm. That resonated deeply as well, Regina. Ellie, don't definitely check in the chat section. Thank you so much to everybody who read for Open Mic. I mean, once again, I just go, it's amazing. The wealth and just the talent and the willingness to read, because I know that can be hard. Thank y'all very much. Karen, did you get it up on Facebook?
I cannot figure out how to get it on Facebook. I think I just sent it to your email account, Malika. Maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I will check since we're here. And yeah, the John Prine reference was perfect for that. And I felt like we were starting to know Mitch. Just some of the stories of things that you were saying. I thought, Ellie, you've got actually a richness right there that I hope you revisit, because I'm not sure that's his only poem.
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
have it. Okay. Have you written
did you
more
get
about
it?
him?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I am going to. Ellie, have you written more about it? About Mitch?
I have not. I have not really. No. As a matter of fact, I wanted to say a little something. I wrote that poem the day or the morning, I think, Ruth, right, of his funeral service. That it was as is typical, as was appropriate for Mitch. We had it at his house, where he wanted the food to be like, he wanted everybody to he had a lot of, whiskey and this and that around, full bar or whatever. He wanted everybody to have, to drink and celebrate, whatever. And I contacted Ruth in kind of a panic, and I was like, okay,
To read.
I wrote this. I don't know whether to read it or not. I don't know if it's good enough. I just wrote it. The service is this afternoon. What do I do? Whatever. And she's like, okay, well, I can read it. And, and Ruth kind of saved me, because she gave me a little bit of feedback about, I don't remember specifically, but it was about thinking about my audience, or I'm not sure, but I wanted to just share that little thing, because Ruth I don't think she ever heard the final one, but she really helped me in a jam.
With an honor too.
Well, that is a beautiful story. I just wonder if Mitch doesn't have more to say with you.
You know what? He
Here
probably
is
does.
a picture.
A picture? Oh my gosh.
Can y'all see it?
Oh, yeah.
This is the poem that this is the which came first, Christy?
The poems
poem
and
or
then
the
the
artwork?
painting. The poems and then the painting.
Fabulous. Okay. It's very three-dimensional. That's fabulous. A nice mixed media piece. I'm
Thank
glad
you.
we got to see it. Thank you, Karen, for figuring that out. All right, guys. Thank you for putting up with my technical difficulties as far as having a video. If I turn it on now, I can say goodbye. And yeah, Patty wrote, what a great time listening to Dear Ruth. I love getting a little more perspective on the fairy tale poems. And I love the open mic poems. Thank you. Yeah, that sums it up. Thank you for saying that, Patty. Be well, everybody. And if you want a signed copy, Ruth, what is the best way to reach out to you?
I'm still a little unsure about the whole signing bit, but if you want a copy, well, I mean, obviously you can get it from the press, but I also have copies at home. So if you just want to, I don't know how to get in touch with me. Well,
Do you want me to put your email address in there?
Put my email, which is easy because my last name is Bardon and my email address is Bardon, Bardon. I always like pardon me, but with a B instead of at mindspring.com, because I'm not really on Facebook. I mean, I only have 3 friends, and I've got to keep it that way because I've turned down so many friend requests at this point that I can't accept anyone else as a friend. So it just has to be my husband and my 2 kids, or else I'm going to hurt everyone else's feelings. There, Bardon at mindspring.com. Like, just put it.
Yeah, I
put it-
put it in the chat section so you can just quickly cut and paste it or
And I mean,
clip it.
while I'm-
And thank
while I'm
y'all.
plugging myself, the first book, Demon Barber, is still available on Main Street Rag, and that was kind of shameless of me, but it is. So
It's not, I think we all
Yeah.
understand that. I think that's an important thing. And I sometimes do remind people, put, your books, because a lot of people here have books that are out in the past 4 years. To put them in the chat section. I didn't do that today. I apologize, but I'll remember another time. All right, guys, be well. Thanks to all my helpers
Thank
with
you,
the
thank you,
co-hosting. I
thank you.
appreciate it.
It's so good. Thank